We all know that being humble is a good thing. The trouble is, half the time when people think they're being humble, they just end up being doormats. We tend to look at pride and humility as opposites. People who are proud are constantly talking about themselves and pointing out their wonderful accomplishments and traits and listing out all that they've achieved, dropping the names of famous people that they know. However they do it, they think they're fantastic and they want to make sure that everybody else does too. So if being humble is the opposite of that, then it means that you really don't think much of yourself at all, and you make sure that the world doesn't either. You say things like, I'm not that good, or other people are better looking than me, or no, it was just luck, or, I'm not worth it. Being humble can mean that people are more important than you, so you let them have their way. What you want isn't important, right? The thing is that while that might be how humility looks, sometimes it's not really being humble at all. Part of the problem is that we're looking at pride wrong. In ancient Christianity, there were two vices, pride and vainglory, that were later blended into one. Vainglory is what we normally think of as pride today, but the original meaning of pride might be closer to being overly self-sufficient. You could potentially call it autonomy. The proud person is the one who doesn't need anyone else, who's capable all on his own. He certainly doesn't need God. The proud person has all the strength he needs. So if pride is about not needing God or anybody else, then humbleness is being totally dependent? Well, that doesn't quite work either. You need a little self-sufficiency. Paul told the Galatians that in the end, each person has to carry his own load. So you have to be responsible for yourself. You have to take care of the needs that you can. But at the same time, you also have to recognize that you can't do everything. And recognizing what you can and you can't do might be a really good place to land when it comes to humility. Before talking about spiritual gifts to the Roman Church, Paul told them that they needed to look at themselves with sober judgment. They had to recognize the gifts they had and the gifts they didn't. They needed a realistic picture of themselves, and they needed to accept whatever that picture was, to be okay with themselves, no matter what their limitations were or their capacities were. Of course, one thing that's always true is that we need God. We're always dependent on God. We need the Spirit to convict and encourage us. We need Jesus to heal us, to show us how to live righteously and to sustain not just us, but the whole world. And we need the Father to empower us to do his work and to help us grow and become holy. And this might be the biggest piece of being humble, recognizing that we need God all the time. In him we live and move and have our being, it says in Acts, and we have to constantly lean into that reality. Without him, we can do nothing. Pride says that if I read my Bible and I pray and I go to church, then I'm going to grow and become a mature Christian. Being humble says that, without Jesus, it kind of doesn't matter how much I do any of those things. It's not going to go anywhere. Humility also doesn't say, I'm not important. It says, this is the reality of how important I am, no more and no less. And with God's help, I'm okay with that. So if you had talents, don't hide or downplay them. And just like if you have weaknesses, you don't hide those either. Neither of those is being humble. Accept the truth of who you are, good and bad, and recognize that you need God's help to become more. That's where you find humility, and that's exactly where God will meet you. So how are you at being humble? Do you have a tendency to be too self-sufficient? Do you try to do everything on your own to make sure that you do the right thing in your own power? I'll admit I do. But what about you? What places are there in your life where you could say, God, I haven't really thought about needing you in this, but I do. Might be worth spending some time talking to God about where are those places where you can invite him in, where you could learn to become more dependent on his presence and on his power. Thanks for watching.